At a time when most Americans thought of slaves as male and women as white, truth embodied a fact that still bears repeating. Among the blacks there are women, among the women there are blacks. This quote from Nell Irvin, biographer of Sojourner Truth, a prominent African American abolitionist and women's rights activist, embodies her mission. During the Civil War, she fought for both women's suffrage and abolition of slavery, making her one of the first activists to fight intersectional issues. She understood that black women faced both racist and sexist oppression, and she refused to budge on either front. Truth's life reflects many of the struggles that those with intersecting marginal identities face in the US today. As a woman, she was forced into an arranged marriage early in life and had 5 children, and as an African American, she grew up as a slave, only gaining freedom later. While issues like slavery and women's right to vote are products of the past, new policies such as voter ID laws have shifted the ways minority groups face discrimination and maintain the invisibility of those with intersecting marginal identities. Voting participation is a critical way to judge the impact that identity groups have on politics, and data from the 1988 election is stark. 74% of white women voted, compared to 68% of African American women, 46% of Latino women, and 40% of Asian women. Additionally, despite voting at a higher rate compared to men in every election since 1964, women generally tend to be slightly less politically active compared to men, since men have higher rates of political donations, contacting government officials, and membership in political or social organizations. Additionally, despite voting more frequently than men, women are much less represented in American politics, making up only 28% of Congress. These results reflect the importance of analyzing intersectional identities and political participation in the US, as we are able to see differences in political participation from both a gender and racial lens. Intersectionality breaks down strict binary identities and highlights the nuance of identity that individuals hold. Intersectionality is extremely important in American politics today, especially as oppressive voting regulations affect multiple layers of people's identities. Voters are lacking crucial protections because the 2016 election is the first presidential election in 50 years without the full provisions of the Voting Rights Act. This led to the voter registration crosscheck, which allowed election officials in more than 24 states to compile a list of citizens whom they allege could be registered in more than one state, thus potentially able to cast multiple ballots and eligible to be purged from the voter rolls. This new initiative targets marginal identities, as Palast explains that the cross-checked list disproportionately threatens solid Democratic constituencies, young, Black, Hispanic, and Asian American voters. The crucial point is that those who hold multiple marginalized identities, such as Latino women, can be doubly marginalized from political participation due to regulations such as the Interstate Voter Registration Crosscheck, along with other factors such as socioeconomic status, language, and education. Additionally, minority identities are required to assimilate to the dominant process of democracy in the US. What I mean by this is that in order to succeed in participating in the political process, marginalized groups must adopt changes in language, styles of interpersonal communication, and dress. Democracy in the US is not equal. In order to participate, minority groups must assimilate to the dominant structure. When understanding political participation, intersectionality is also critical to understand political alignments and voting tendencies. Linked fate, which is the idea that marginalized groups' interests are connected, promotes solidarity within race, sexuality, and gender groups. However, this solidarity can backfire for those in intersectional groups. For example, the Combahee River Collective, a group of Black feminists, struggle together with Black men against racism, while we also struggle with Black men about sexism. Gender issues are just as important as racial ones to these women, and this importance creates a complicated political relationship with their male counterparts, as they both struggle with and against them on issues. They explain that feminism is very threatening to the majority of Black people because it calls into question some of the most basic assumptions about our existence, i.e., that sex should be a determinant of power relationships. In other words, gender issues are downplayed or ignored in the pursuit of racial solidarity and unity. This is just one example of how intersectional identities can clash. If you hold intersectional identities, I hope this piece inspires you to go out and use your voice and your vote to represent your unique interests. While political participation is more difficult for those outside of the dominant system, I hope that understanding the problem and advocating for change will shift the way American politics and voting participation and representation are done today.